Waste is the bane of the developed world. About a third of all our food is thrown aside before it reaches the consumer. That's about 8% of greenhouse gas emissions that needn't happen. And this is where CRISP steps in, a real-time data system providing actionable insights for the entire supply chain, providing that crucial sweet spot to optimize supply and demand. I'm Andrew Wilson, and I'm here to speak to CRISP CEO, Ara Trasdal. Ara, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Good to talk to you.
Great, thanks.
Tell us about the importance of supply chains. We all know about supply chains now and since the pandemic, but what are they like when they work? What are they like when they go wrong?
Right, yeah, very good question. So before we started CRISP, which was before the pandemic, I think most people assumed that the supply chains were perfect. And then through the pandemic, we saw as consumers that we walked into stores and we saw empty shelves. The retailers realized they push a button today and they expect the product to arrive tomorrow, and it took 6 months for the product to arrive. So through these last years, there's been a huge kind of catalyst and understanding of what's going on in the supply chain. And one supply chain that always have had problems is the food supply chain. And that's kind of where the inspiration for the company came as well. On this trip after I sold the technology company in 2016, we took a family on a trip around the world. I was tired and burned out and wanted to kind of just learn. And then we saw, particularly in the food supply chain, the challenges. So we were in India 1 week, and you saw kids the same age as my kids who were in desperate need of the food. And then the week after, we stayed at an apple orchard in New Zealand, and here we saw just apples falling on the ground, rotting in the field. They didn't have enough data to take the cost of picking them. And after that, we really kind of studied up on this problem and saw that one third of all the food that's made in the world actually never reaches a consumer at all. It's lost in the supply chain. And that's in a world where you have almost 1 billion people that live with some kind of food insecurity. So it's a huge paradox.
And why do you think, looking back, we were so complacent? Why didn't we understand the vulnerability then of the supply chain?
You know, I think it's always been like that. Nobody actually really saw a problem, etc. And the whole industry operates with a very old technology and a way of kind of sharing data. It's basically an Excel sheet that gets sent over the internet with purchase orders. So there are 10 million companies in the food supply chain, and everybody needs access to updated information, or else you'll have all of these oversupply issues, undersupply, shortages, etc., and also the massive amount of waste.
And where does the CRISP platform come into all this then?
Yeah, so that's kind of what we try to address. It's the ability to get access to data. So on one end, we connect into all of the retailers. So now we have about $2.5 trillion worth of retailer transactions on the platform. So through that, we see what are the consumers buying, what price did they buy it for, is the product on shelf, yes or no, how much inventory does the retailer have in the stores, etc. Then we connect into the big distributors, the ones that are selling to the retailers. And from there, we're learning how much orders did come to the distributor, how much inventory does the distributor have, and what many orders were actually delivered to the retailer, and how much orders did they place with their manufacturers on the brands, if you will. And now we have 500 brands on the platform, so that through there we understand their pricing, their marketing information, how much inventory they have again. So now we're the first one to actually see the entire supply chain and have data on the entire supply chain.
And I bet that's increased, that interest in what you've got to offer has increased even in the last year, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, we had spent $40 million building a technology that nobody used. We had 0 customers before the pandemic. And then throughout all of the supply chain problems and issues, now everybody sees that there's a huge value of actually sharing data, and now we have the 500-600 customers on the platform. So
that's looking good. One thing I read in your website was something called the bullwhip effect.
Yeah.
What's that?
So during the pandemic, I also became the tech nerd that everybody actually wanted to talk to during family dinners and things like that, because everybody asked me, when is my refrigerator going to come? Why is there no hand soap in the store? So I became the one that everybody asked about that. So then this big kind of supply chain theory called the bullwhip theory, and it says that if it's a little bit inaccuracy in the data, or it's a delay in the data, the little whip of changing consumer demand actually ripples through the entire supply chain. So if it's plus minus 5% is the actual consumer demand. If you're a couple of steps removed from that as a supplier, you see plus minus 40%. So now you overproduce or you underproduce. So that's typically what we see is this bullwhip effect.
Must be catastrophic for food.
Oh yeah, especially for food. So a lot of it is also kind of, a simple example is, let's say there's one retailer, one distributor, and one manufacturer. So if you are the retailer and you're selling 100 of a product, but the distributor is only delivering you now 50, you're smart and then let me order 200 instead so I can get 100. Now as a distributor might then think, this product is taking off, let me order 400. And then the manufacturer is like, oh God, products are taking off. Let me make 800, right? So that's kind of a simplified version of this ripple effect that happens. And it happens on the other end as well. So now you as a retailer have way too much inventory. Now you stop ordering completely. And I might read that as, I didn't know consumers are actually buying my product. So this is, the supply chains are in this constant imbalance in a way. You have way too much or you have way too little, and the only way to fix that is to have data that goes through the whole supply chain.
Well, this kind of back and forth of the so-called bullwhip effect, is that something that's constantly happening all around the globe?
Yes, it sure is. So we see that in every supply chain. It's more catastrophic in these supply chains that have expiration date and long lead times, just like the food supply one, but every supply chain that are complex have the same type of problems. And it's also very much kind of the data infrastructure there. So people are receiving these purchase orders over time you cannot really understand what's going on with the consumers. That's the signal that everybody needs.
So if I look at this and think, okay, fine, you've got manufacturing, you've got transportation, you've got the different companies and countries involved in that transportation, you've got retailers at the other end, you've got consumers, you've got fashion, you've got things that people want, things that want that are seasonal. Mm-hmm. That's extraordinarily complicated. Mm-hmm. Crisp, can you just walk in as Crisp and go, fine, I can marshal all this data and give you a clearer picture?
Yeah, so that's what we have been successful doing, because a lot of these companies actually have great systems themselves to deal with it. They're just missing the fuel. They're just missing the actual data to make their own systems better. So we can think of us as the plumbers in a way. We are the data plumbers that come in and help and unlock all of this data to flow into systems. Once you have that, now artificial intelligence works and automation works and all of that needs data in order for it to work. So
there's the transportation and the moving. There's also marketing at the other end. I mean, and can you play a role in that as well?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of demand for that. So we did big partnerships with a company called the Trade Desk, which is the largest kind of buy platform for advertising. And the three kind of areas that we push out together with them. Number one is efficiency of advertising marketing spend. We see that 25 to 35% of the advertising spend actually go to stores that don't have the products on the shelf. So that is a waste that in 2023 most CFOs would want to not waste money. They also see it as stay on shelf. So the hardest position to get is to actually be on shelf for retailer. They are real estate companies. They want to make profits on the shelf. So you can get an eviction notice as a brand. We're kicking you off the shelf. So we help them analyze that so they can stay on shelf. And the third part of it is sustainability advertising, because we have all of the expiration dates, we know how much inventory exists, we know the sell-through rates, and through that we can calculate that there's a huge risk of these products going bad. And now the advertising and marketer and the CMOs can actually help move that product before it goes bad.
So the big picture is getting clearer for me listening to you talk here now. Let's zoom back in on the issue of food and perishable goods, which you were mentioning there in part. Are you getting closer now to seeing a solution to that original dilemma of all that wastage?
We are. So the ones that work with us report an 8 to 10% reduction in food waste. And when you do that across multiple steps in the supply chain, those numbers start to add up. But I have a 10, 15-year journey ahead of me with this company. There are probably 10 to 20 million companies involved in just the food supply chain. It's an $8 trillion industry, probably one of the most important industries in the world. So for this to get massive adoption, I need more time, but we definitely see incredible in early results.
Are you optimistic?
I'm very optimistic, I am, because nobody makes any, it's a triple bottom line in a way, because it's good for the world, and executives care about the world, and employees of companies care about the world. So, and it's good for the companies that are our partners as well. They make more money, they they waste less, they actually create more profits, having products on shelf, they sell more, right? So, and it's good for us as Crisp, so we can keep kind of investing in these type of solutions. So we think about it as this triple bottom line.
Our trust. Pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.